Welcome to the Organic Wine Podcast. Hello, this is Adam Huss coming to you from Los Angeles. Thanks so much for listening. In this special episode, I'm going to clear up a far too common misunderstanding about how much it costs to get certified organic or biodynamic. But I'll also raise some of the complicated but important questions about whether it's worth getting certified. I want to offer a big thanks to Gina, the lady behind Lady of the Sunshine Wines, for providing her real-life numbers about getting the Shane Vineyard certified biodynamic. I didn't quote any numbers that are specific to Gina's business, but they helped verify and flesh out the information about the cost of biodynamic certification and were a huge help. And I want to thank Jane Wade at CCOF for her very timely and thorough responses to my questions. CCOF is the nonprofit that provides organic certification in California. Let's jump right in. Is the cost of organic or biodynamic certification worth it? Let me clear something up right away. It does not cost a lot to get certified organic or biodynamic. I've heard so many retailers and producers excuse the lack of certification in their wine inventories because of the exorbitant cost of certification, and that's just absolutely not true. Retailers, please stop using the cost of certification as an excuse for why you carry wines produced from dubious farming. Producers, please stop using the cost of certification as an excuse for why you don't get certified. You're spreading misinformation and doing a disservice to everyone involved. I know much of this spreading of misinformation is just ignorance about the certification process, and it's easy to speak confidently about something you don't actually know about because often you don't know what you don't know. But it is an immediate red flag for me when someone uses the cost of certification as an excuse, because when someone assures me that their wines are farmed really well, but the cost of certification is prohibitive, and that's why they have wines from non-certified vineyards, what I hear is a sales pitch. Because I know the cost of certification is not prohibitive, I begin to wonder what else the salesperson either doesn't know about the wine or is even possibly concealing from me. Am I saying that every producer needs to go out and get certified? And that every retailer should only carry certified wines? No, not at all. Maybe that would be great, but all I'm saying is don't use the cost of certification as an excuse for why you aren't certified or don't carry certified wines. Because, bottom line, getting certified organic or biodynamic actually doesn't cost that much. And some of that very reasonable cost is actually reimbursed by the U.S. government. With that fundamental point made, let's get into all the nitty-gritty. Because here's the unfortunate next point in answering whether the cost of certification is worth it. It's complicated, and it depends. Here's something that a lot of people, even seasoned professionals in the wine industry, don't realize. You cannot say the phrase, made with organic grapes, on your wine label, even if your wine is made from 100% certified organic grapes, if your winery isn't also certified in addition to the vineyard. That's right, there are two certifications, one for the vineyard and one for the winery. Without both certifications, you cannot make the claim on your label that your wine was made with organic grapes, even if it was. Nor can you use the term organic wine on your labels. Labeling restrictions under biodynamic certification through Demeter are actually very similar to that. Why is this? Well, I don't know for sure. See how I admitted ignorance there? That's okay. You can do that too. But if I had to speculate, I'd guess it's because in wineries, there can be lots of mixing and blending of ingredients in wine. You could crush 2 tons of certified organically grown grapes and 1 ton of conventionally farmed grapes and then blend them together and make one wine and technically say it was made with organic grapes, in fine print 66%. So having the winery certified in addition to the vineyard probably adds another necessary layer of accountability in the organic claims made on wine labels. As you could see, this could cause a problem if you don't own your own winery or share a winery space, because to certify your winery, you'd have to get everyone who uses the winery on board, and that is often impossible. So if only your vineyard is certified, what can you say? Well, not much, actually. And what you can say might cause a problem for some producers, because the only organic claim that you can make, if only your vineyards are certified organic, is to give a complete ingredients list on your label and list organic grapes as one of your ingredients. I say this could cause a problem for some producers because it can look pretty strange to list organic grapes in an ingredients list that also includes other common conventional winemaking ingredients like diammonium phosphate or gelatin or megapurple or velcorin or any number of the over 60 ingredients allowed to be added to wine during winemaking. So if transparency scares you, you may not like the idea that the only way to tout your organic farming is in an ingredients list. And that may be a deterrent to you to wanting to get certified at any cost. Why go through any amount of hassle that includes even a small fee if your label doesn't get a boost? Well, that's a great question, actually. And I would argue that there are many advantages to only certifying your vineyard, even if you have no intention of mentioning it on your labels, because you can mention it pretty much anywhere else, like on your website and social media, in emails, in press releases, and on marketing materials. Now, what is the actual cost of certification? Well, it depends. Let's talk first only about certifying your vineyard, and we'll address certifying your winery later. It will cost more the larger your vineyard is because there is a licensing fee based on your production. It's a tiered fee for organic and 0.5% of gross sales for biodynamic. But while this means greater costs for larger vineyards, you'd have the benefit of scale. So while your total cost will be more, your cost per acre will be significantly less than a smaller vineyard. I'll break that down in a minute, but let me give you one more caveat. Keep in mind that to get certified for the first time takes 3 years. So even if you've been farming better than organically for 50 years, the certifying body doesn't know this and has no records of it. So they need to do an annual inspection to create a farming audit that shows you are indeed farming wonderfully and that you've done it for a sufficient amount of time, 3 years, that your land is a viable organic farm worthy of certification. There are costs during these 3 years because you've paid an application fee, you're covering the costs of the CCOF or Demeter inspector's time and travel expenses to come inspect your vineyard. But while you're paying for these first 3 years, you still aren't certified and can't make any organic claims. In other words, we might look at these first 3 years as a single fee for the cost of getting certified, even though it will be in a series of smaller payments spread over the course of that time. And it's different for organic versus biodynamic certification. For organic, there are 2 inspections in the first 3 years, and for biodynamic, there are 3 inspections. And further, once you get certified, the cost will depend not only on the size of your vineyard, but also on how much it produces and how much you sell your grapes for, or what they would cost if you sold them. So let's put this in a real life circumstance. Let's say you have a 20-acre vineyard producing an average of 3 tons per acre, and that the market rate for your grapes is $3,000 per ton. That's a gross production value of $180,000. Now I'm going to present a worst case scenario so that we can see the absolute most that it will cost. Inspections cost an average of $500 to $1,000, and there's one of those per year in Demeter. So let's say $3,000 for the first 3 years. The first time application fee is $325 for CCOF and $350 for Demeter. And in your third year, you'll be paying a renewal fee and an inspection fee to Demeter of $420, plus a production fee, that's that licensing fee of 0.5% on your total gross production. That will be $900 in Demeter. For organic, there's no renewal fee, and the production fee is only $710 for that amount of production. So a 3-year certification will cost you, at the very most, $4,035 for organic, or actually $3,035 because there's only 2 inspections, or $4,670 for biodynamic. That's around $1,500 per year at worst. You'll be fully certified at this point, and the truth is that the cost will likely be less. Inspections average less than $750 in a vast majority of cases, bringing the real cost of certification down below $1,200 per year for the first 3 years. After getting certified, your annual cost will just be the annual inspection plus the licensing and renewal fees. So your annual cost to have an organically or biodynamically certified 20-acre vineyard will stay at around $1,500 per year or less. So there you have it. For less than $1,500 per year, you can have a certified organic or biodynamic vineyard. I would definitely not call that an exorbitant cost. And I hope you can see why I really want people to stop using the cost of certification as an excuse for why someone isn't certified. One important caveat here is that while Demeter is a national certification, CCOF is just for California, and fees and processes may vary slightly depending on the organic certifying organization in your state. But don't forget, through the Farm Bill, the U.S. government will reimburse you for a portion of the cost of organic certification, making it cost actually even less. But it's important to note that even if you're farming 7 acres instead of 20, this cost won't change that much because the majority of the cost is in the inspection, and that cost will not change unless the inspector is dealing with a very large vineyard spread over multiple blocks at a distance from each other. But that means that a 7-acre vineyard could pay over $200 an acre for certification each year, while a 20-acre vineyard would pay only $75 per acre. And maybe that makes a difference. I mean, for that extra $125 per acre, I can afford a lot of more cover crop seeds, compost, and even some extra labor to help spread them. And those are vitally important expenses in an organic vineyard. Or, for example, I could take $1,500 of that annual expense for certification and use it instead to rent sheep to run through my vineyard each spring for a month to do all the wonderful sheepy things that sheep do for an ecosystem. Honestly, I'm pretty sure it will cost you more than $1,500 to run sheep in your vineyard, but you see what I'm getting at. Now, that doesn't mean that the cost of certification is a deterrent. It just means that you might have different priorities about where to put your money. That's a very different thing. Whether or not you choose to prioritize the use of that very modest amount of money for certification or not does not mean that the cost is prohibitive. But let's say you do choose to prioritize the cost of certification of your vineyard. You still haven't certified your winery. Now, I'm not going to go into as much detail about certifying your winery, but suffice it to say that it will cost approximately the same as certifying your vineyard. So take that $1,500 and double it. If you want to say organic wine or made with organic grapes on your label, it will cost you roughly $3,000 per year. Now, this couldn't be classified as exorbitant by any stretch, I don't think, but it is 100% more than just certifying your vineyard. And certifying your winery may put limitations on your operations that you don't want. If your winemaking skews more conventional, for example, you may find your choice of yeast to be much more limited. Personally, I wouldn't have a lot of interest in the additional cost of certifying my winery. I think it's a great idea, but at Centralis, we already list all of our ingredients added during winemaking, and my reason for being in wine at all is because of the farming. If I can look on your winery's website and see that you make wine from certified organic or biodynamic vineyards, I don't really care at all what you put on your labels. But you can see how the question of whether the cost of certification is worth it becomes a very personal one in the answering. If the main way that my wines were sold was in a grocery store and we had very little personal interaction with folks who drink our wine, being able to say made with organic grapes on the label might be really important to us. So some of the questions you might want to ask would be, what kinds of wine drinkers are you trying to sell your wines to? What is your dominant form of messaging with those wine drinkers? Do you want to list ingredients? Is there an organic premium that comes from certification when selling wine to your demographic? There are lots of ways to evaluate certification. I will say this, though. Certification makes communicating with customers a lot simpler. Trying to explain good farming takes too long for most sales interactions, whether in print or in person. Brevity is one of your best sales tools, and certified organic or certified biodynamic is about as brief as you can be when trying to highlight the values and care that you put into your approach to winemaking. It's also a signal of accountability. I'm a skeptic, so when someone says, farmed organically but not certified, my gut reaction is they must cheat. I immediately assume that they use chemical fertilizers, or that they think that not using Roundup means they're farming organically, because I've encountered both of those examples too many times to count at this point, which is ridiculous. Because, by the way, if you're doing either of those things, you aren't organic, period. If you're certified, I will still want to know the details of your farming, but my skepticism won't be immediately triggered. Now, is certification a hassle despite its low cost? That is it worth the time and energy to complete the paperwork and coordinate the annual inspection, etc.? First of all, it's really not that much extra paperwork. The hardest and most time-consuming part of being certified organic is farming organically. The paperwork of certification may not be your favorite thing, but it's really not that much. And the good folks at CCOF and Demeter are very good about answering questions and providing guidance. I got a very thorough and helpful email response to my questions within 24 hours. Really, if you're going to use the hassle of certification as an excuse, you're probably just looking for excuses. On the other hand, are there any legitimate ecological reasons why you might not want to get certified organic or biodynamic? That may seem like a strange question, but I can imagine a scenario in which keeping your organic certification might cause you to farm in a more harmful way, debatably. For instance, this past year of 2021, the wine growers on the East Coast had to deal with an average of 5 out of 7 days of rain all growing season. To be organic, that would mean spraying 3 to 4 days on the regular, like every 3 to 4 days, to prevent fungal buildup, or spraying less but taking a big risk of crop loss. In a larger vineyard, that would mean gallons and gallons of diesel fuel burnt, powering dozens of tractor passes, causing serious compaction in muddy soil, and lots of stuff being put into the environment even if it was organically allowed. If you spray a systemic fungicide, you'll lose your certification. But from an ecological perspective, would it be worse to spray a systemic chemical fungicide once every 14 days? What if I had to do this only once every 5 years when the weather was really bad, and the rest of the time you could farm perfectly organically? I don't think it would make sense to lose your certification every 5 years and start the process over again the following year, but you might make the argument that you are farming more responsibly than if you stayed within the limits of organic practices to keep your certification. I honestly don't have the answer to these questions, although I might make the joke that this could be the universe's way of telling us we shouldn't be growing vinifera in climates where it can't thrive. The point is, evaluating what is the best farming for you can be very complicated and involve some very difficult decision making, and getting certified organic or biodynamic can further complicate those decisions. Having said that, if you don't at least aspire to farm organically at this point in history, you really aren't paying attention, or you're being lied to. In the vast majority of cases, especially in the West and Southwest, I would argue getting certified organic and or biodynamic is a smart choice and a wise investment of $1,500 per year. And I think it's fair to be skeptical as a wine buyer when you hear organic claims without certification. And finally, and most importantly, I hope everyone can see that the cost of organic or biodynamic certification is extremely reasonable, is partially government subsidized, and we should now and forevermore never use the cost as an excuse for lack of certification. Thanks for listening. You can find a breakdown of fees for both Demeter and CCOF on their websites at ccof.org or demeter-usa.org. Happy farming and happy drinking in 2022.